On Abraham Lincoln's death, one of the reporters, I didn't have time to kind of research my old writings, but he was the top reporter of one of the newspapers at the time. He said that a tree is best measured when it's down. And he was talking with the story, over the months ahead, you would really see what the president had accomplished and how much he had done. And I look at Jack's passing, and I see the same thing. I think over the months ahead, just talking with the people that I've talked to and listening to the people talk at the funeral, just to see how many people he touched and the lives that he has made different. And I looked at a lot of his photos and part of the war journal that he did. And like I said, I just know that the months ahead, we're just going to see so much that he has done. And my farewell tribute to my brother is not going to do justice to what he's accomplished, because I have not put the time in this, and I have not, so many people to talk to, and so many of my thoughts that are going to still run through my head. Three main points that I've seen: that he had a love for the military and war, stuff like that. He loved his art, and he loved children. Always seemed to love kids. I'm going to try to do this in a progression of his life. He was born during the Depression. It was not an easy time. Not an easy time for my parents. My mom would often tell me about it. They were poor. Mom said that even though they were poor, there was always enough food for them to eat, which was neat. Out of all her children, Mom told me that Jack was the easiest to watch out of all the kids, because she fought him a bunch of soldiers, and he would spend hours doing those wars with the soldiers and playing with them. And he also loved his books. He would spend hours with the books. Mom would tell me that his friends would come, knock on the door and want Jack to come out to play, but he would rather read than go out and play. He did like football, and I guess there was times that I was talking to my brother Eddie, that he would, when football was around and stuff, that would be the thing that would lure him out to play football. Most of his young years, I guess or at least when he got around 10 or 11 years old, they moved to downtown Newark. I might have my dates wrong, but it was like around Woodside Avenue, and he spent years there. This next parts of this were from my mom and from my knowledge of history. He wanted to be a soldier, and I guess he must have been around 15 years old, and he bugged my mom all the time because he was too young to join. And Mom finally consented. I guess he must have been around 17 years old, too young to enlist himself, and he went in. After he went in, I guess he wasn't as happy as he thought he would be, but he really stuck it out. He was in the 45th Infantry. And as the Army, it looked like he made sergeant in a young time frame. From looking at his journal, we didn't know much about what his things he did. He worked a flamethrower, and that was the most dangerous job that you could do in the Army. If you were his job was to get close to the bunkers and the pillboxes, get that flamethrower in there, and take out that enemy machine gun nest. If you were the enemy machine gunner and you saw people coming, you saw the troops coming, and you didn't know that they saw you in most parts, the first person that you wanted to take out was the man with the flamethrower, because he would give you an agonizing death. At this time of the war, the North and the South in the Korean War, they were stalemated. And MacArthur came up with a plan. His plan, because he couldn't move forward, was to have an amphibious assault behind the enemy lines and then push up towards the Chinese border. His plan worked very well, and they almost did like a German blitzkrieg, pushing the enemy troops right up to the border. The only mistake, though, is China intervened after they got up to the border. As far as I know, Jack was right there. And what the Chinese did is now far outnumber our troops. The Chinese pushed back through, and Jack was in this. The Chinese tactic was simple but deadly. They had human waves of soldiers because they had so many people. And the first group of the men in the front would would carry the guns after they were gunned down, and men behind him would pick it up. Most of Jack's division were killed. I believe God miraculously spared Jack. Mom had told me, I guess it was during those winter months, that she hadn't heard from Jack, and she feared that he was dead. And it was a Christmas Eve service that he had never heard from him. Came in the back of the church, and there he was. It was just must have been a neat thing to say. Jack never discussed the war. I talked to Sean, I talked to Nick, I talked to my brother. My brother never knew he even saw combat. He has lots of medals. He was a hero. We'll never know exactly, maybe as we look through his journals, what he did, how many lives he saved, what he had to do. He had the Bronze Star. I know that wasn't an easy one. Korean service medals and much more. After Jack got out of the military, I mean, if anybody saw pictures, I'm sure he did at the funeral. He was a handsome, he looked at a couple of those pictures, he kind of looked like a very handsome young man, 6'5". He loved Mom. He loved going with her and taking her into New York City. And Mom loved taking him and going with him. And she said that he would walk by the ladies, and the ladies would turn around and look at him, and he was so handsome. But I think he got the best lady in the world when he got Nadja. He was a great wife. He went to college, as we were spoken. He was so highly intelligent, to say the least. He married Nadja. She wanted me to mention that I cried during her wedding, but I was 4 months old, so it wasn't like a mom's cry. And they were married for 55 years, and to me, that's such a statement in itself. And I think it was either Molly or Kara mentioned yesterday, and I thought about it too, that they were almost true as what the scripture says, that they were one flesh. And to see one of them, you saw the other, and they were so great together. Jack was a teacher. He had a talent to teach many different types of students, from the very gifted, intelligent ones to the ones that you wouldn't want to turn your back on because they might throw a knife at you or something, and ones that he told me they would sometimes chase out if they jumped through a window or something out the school. He had a love for the disabled, the preschool disabled kids, which was neat. And after he retired, I guess you couldn't take that teacher out of him. He still taught with that disabled art and used that talent of art. Jack loved art, he loved poetry, he loved to paint, and he loved to draw. And I think, as we were talking about how that would live on, I see that creativity living on in Sean's paintings and with Sean's art, and that eternity will help me to remember that. And also with Nick, with his music, and just with that poem that Nick did, I'll see Jack in them, in that too. I believe he was a really good dad. As they were telling you, he had a sense of humor that was sometimes a little unusual. And he had a love for the outdoors. He loved the upstate New York, loved Lake Champlain from far as I can remember. I remember going up there and visit. And I love upstate New York, loved the taking walks in the woods. I remember one of the pictures there, a bunch of kids like sticking stickers on him. So he was patient and loved kids. I remember when I was a couple times when I was smaller, he had to stay with us as he was moving around looking for jobs and stuff. And I was a kid, maybe 9 or 10 years old. I remember setting up soldiers with him and having wars. He would set up his side of soldiers, and I would set up mine. I was almost playing with like another 10-year-old, as a kid. And he still loved his model tanks and boats and planes. And if you were going to walk by a hobby shop, you're sure he's going to want to go in there and look at that hobby shop to see what was in there. When I was younger, and like I said, times that he lived with us, he would take coffee cans, and we would play this. I never knew what he was going to do at first. He would take the cans up, and we had a old farm behind us, and we would go to the pond, and he would have his can, which would be his battleship, and I would have my can, that would be my battleship, and we would take turns shooting our BB guns at the cans we would see who would sink whose battleship, and it was a pretty fun, neat game. Kevin must have been 4 or 5 years old, and I remember going at Christmas time over at Jack and Nodge's, and he gave Kevin this big plastic battleship that shot missiles and fired actual little projectiles, and Jack was playing with them, and suddenly Jack and Kevin, they just disappeared for like the longest time. I don't know if it was my wife or something, said, "You know where they went?" I said, "I don't know where they went." And all of a sudden I heard some splashing, and I went into the bathroom, and Jack had filled up the bathtub, and they were playing Battleship with the bathtub, shooting the missiles, and the battleship was floating in the bathtub. And here he was, and he was really older, and he was playing just like a kid with Kevin in that bathtub, and Kevin loved it. As I said, Jack and Nadja together, they were just such a great team. And I remember being as a young man, and being able to go to them with like different problems that I was going through, and they would just give me great counsel. And I see that too with listening to Gary and Molly, and just different things that they're able to talk to them about. And to me, that was just neat. During those end days, what I saw in Jack the few times that I did go over there, which I thought was really neat, he had a humility. He would take help from you and not be without any type of pride, helping him up or getting him something or just being there and just touching his hand. And he was thankful for that hand up. Like I said, Nadja and him were married for 55 years, and if I could learn anything, that sticking with your spouse. And Nadja, at the end there, she had such great love for him. And it was, to me, it's like seeing a Christ-like love for the person that you had married and being with him. And I was just have such grateful thanks for that. And I have thanks for Tanya, too, for what she did, the times that her help and her love and compassion for him. I went there New Year's Day because Nadja just seemed like she needed a boost, and try to give a helping hand. And I remember I sat and watching the movie there, Jack and I, and he was still making comments about the movie, and I wasn't sure if he had actually remembered me or not. And Tanya came in a little later on, and she pointed to me, and this was just a fond memory, and she said, "Do you know who that is?" And Jack looked at me, and he goes, "That's my brother." And that was just such a neat thing. About a week and a half passed. Jack had really progressed and had gotten worse. And I asked Kate, my wife, or if Laura, my daughter, has cerebral palsy, if she would want to see him. We didn't know if that would affect him or get him agitated or anything. Nadja felt that it was okay to bring her in. And Jack was out. He hadn't said anything. We were sitting in there for about 10 minutes, and I didn't think Jack was going to do anything or anything but just watch him. And I think Laura kind of screeched a little bit, and all of a sudden I heard that noise or that sound woke in Jack, and Jack sat up and saw Laura and had a big smile and said, "Hi, Laura, how you doing?" and talked to us for a few minutes, and it was just a neat, fond farewell memory for me. Like I said, I only have many fond memories of Jack, and I want to end in that. And as Nick had said with his poem, I'll see those memories in a lot of his poetry, his music, in Sean's art. My hope, too, is for Nadja. She has so much still to offer for us, and I want her to live on and be here for the triplets and for all of us. And she has given me such inspiration. Like I said, I just learned so much from her love.